Good day, everyone. This is Mark Velo, and you're listening to Headline News. U.S. Defense Secretary makes first visit to Israel to strengthen U.S.-Israeli cooperation to ensure regional security. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin held talks with Israeli Defense Minister Gantz on November 11th. They had important discussions on regional security threats and ways to deepen U.S.-Israeli defense cooperation. Austin is the highest-ranking U.S. official to visit Israel since President Joe Biden took office in January. Austin arrived in Tel Aviv on November 11th for a two-day visit to Israel. According to AFP, Israel Defense Minister Gantz said of the talks, "We will work closely with our American allies to ensure that any new agreement with Iran will secure the vital interests of the world, of the U.S., prevent a dangerous arms race in our region, and protect the State of Israel." Austin also said, as a major strategic partner for the United States, our bilateral relationship with Israel, in particular, is central to regional stability and security in the Middle East. Washington will work with Israel to promote common security interests and priorities. He reiterated to Gantz that our commitment to Israel is enduring and ironclad. He will continue to consult closely on the threat posed by Iran in order to ensure Israel's qualitative military edge and to strengthen Israel's security. According to reports, Austin's trip will also include meetings with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and will continue to Germany, the United Kingdom, and Belgium after his visit to Israel. It is worth mentioning that Austin's visit to Israel comes as the power distribution system at Iran's Natanz nuclear facility failed early on the 11th. There were no casualties or radiation contamination due to the failure of the distribution system, said Behruz Kamalvandi, a spokesman for the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran. But the power of the Natanz facility was affected. The cause of the failure is currently under investigation. The country's nuclear chief, Ali Akbar Salehi, said, according to state TV, that it was an act of nuclear terrorism. Various Israeli media outlets have assessed that cyber attacks caused a power outage at the Natanz nuclear facility, damaging the facility with sensitive centrifuges. Although these reports do not provide a source for their assessment, Israeli media outlets maintain close ties with the country's military intelligence agency. If Israeli caused the power outage at Natanz, the reports said it would further raise tensions between the two countries. The blackout comes a day after Iranian President Rouhani ordered the startup of nearly 200 IR-6 centrifuges at the Natanz nuclear facility to begin producing enriched uranium. He said the IR-6 centrifuges are 10 times more efficient at producing enriched uranium than the first-generation IR-1s. Iran's move may again be a violation of the Iran nuclear deal reached in 2015. Former U.S. President Donald Trump announced in 2018 that he was withdrawing from the nuclear deal Iran had made with global powers and reinstated sanctions against Iran. The Trump administration argued that instead of making it more difficult for Iran to develop nuclear weapons, the deal has enabled Iran to use funding from the agreement to support terrorist attacks in places like Syria and Yemen. Israel, under the administration of hawkish Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has also strongly opposed and criticized the deal. Danny Danon, Israel's former ambassador to the United Nations, told Fox News in January that he believed that the Biden administration should maintain a strong stance on Iran and partner with allies. Blinken criticized the CCP for lack of transparency and calls for thorough investigation into the source of the virus. On Sunday, April 14th, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that the lack of transparency in Beijing's handling of the outbreak has made the pandemic worse. He emphasized the need to get to the bottom of how the virus originated. In an interview with NBC, Blinken called out the CCP for not providing international experts with access to crucial information in real time. As a result, the virus got out of hand faster, he said, adding that the CCP's concealment of the outbreak led to much more egregious results than it might otherwise. Blinken believed that this pandemic taught us the need for a strong international global health security system to ensure that the loss of lives due to lack of access to information does not happen again. He said the system in question must include requirements for transparency in outbreaks, a commitment to information sharing, and access to experts. He emphasized China has to play a part in that. Blinken also spoke of the importance of reaching a more definitive conclusion on the origins of the outbreak. We need to do that precisely so we fully understand what happened in order to have the best shot possible, preventing it from happening again, he said. That's why we need to get to the bottom of this. In addition to condemning the CCP's cover-up of the pandemic, Blinken also spoke of the intolerable genocide that the CCP has been committing in Xinjiang. He said, we need to take concrete action to make sure, for example, that none of our companies are providing China with things that they can use to repress populations, including the Uyghur population. Blinken also mentioned that the U.S. has a serious commitment to Taiwan being able to defend itself against threats from the CCP. After an investigation in Wuhan, China, the WHO issued a report in March on the origins of the outbreak. The report concluded the hypothesis that the outbreak had leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virus Research was extremely unlikely. The report was met with criticism in the United States, the European Union, and even from the WHO itself. The countries called on the CCP to give independent experts full access to all the data on the original outbreak, rather than just providing a showcase of what the Beijing government had selected. On March 27th, David Asher, who led State Department inquiries into COVID-19's origins, said that although he could not confirm 100%, he believed the virus had been leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology as the only logical explanation. He said, if the Chinese do not come forward with the truth, or we do not sort out this disaster, it is one of the greatest failures in the history of human society. On April 4th, Jamie Metzel, an advisor to the WHO Advisory Committee, said that the possibility of the Wuhan Institute of Virology leaking the virus was more likely than the current working hypothesis supported by WHO because of overwhelming circumstantial evidence. Metzel told Australian media outlet Sky News, this entire joint team study, in my view, is not credible or valid because they examined some hypotheses and not others, and then had the temerity to rank the likelihood of the different hypotheses. The WHO's report concluded that the virus was most likely to have been transferred from bats to humans through an intermediate zoonotic source. The second possibility is direct bat-to-human transmission. The third possibility was transmission from frozen food to humans. The report concluded that the theory that the virus came from a leak at the Wuhan Institute of Virus Research was the least likely. Metzel said the circumstantial evidence supporting the laboratory leak theory is overwhelming, including evidence of horseshoe bats. Wuhan is well beyond their range. Wuhan doesn't have horseshoe bats, he said. What Wuhan does have is China's only Level 4 Virology Institute with the world's largest collection of bat coronaviruses. U.S. government might send climate envoy to visit Shanghai, China. On April 10th, U.S. climate envoy and former Secretary of State John Kerry is expected to travel to Shanghai in the near future to try to consult with China on issues in the area of climate change. Kerry has plans to travel to Shanghai to meet with Chinese officials on a date set for this week. The Washington Post said that the trip was scheduled to take place before the two-day virtual Earth Day summit on April 22nd to 23rd, the newspaper said. But a State Department spokesman responded that the agency has not announced the trip at this time. The newspaper quoted an unnamed U.S. official as saying Kerry planned to meet with China's climate envoy, Xie Jianhua, but the meeting could still be canceled. The Washington Post said the U.S. State Department confirmed that Kerry and Xie Jianhua had begun discussions on related matters. The move is seen by observers as an attempt by the Biden administration to engage in an exchange of discussions with Beijing on a single area in the climate arena, as China and the United States have continued to conflict on human rights, trade, and national security in recent years. Kerry has repeatedly said the global climate crisis should be treated separately from other issues, calling it an issue that needs to be worked on by China and the United States. During his visit to India last week, Kerry said he was hopeful but not confident about the prospects for U.S.-China cooperation in the climate field. China's climate envoy position was created in February, and Xie Jianhua was appointed to the position, who led the communist government's climate delegation from 2007 to 2018. He used to work with Kerry, who was Secretary of State in the Obama administration, on the climate issue. This concludes today's broadcast. Thank you for your time, and stay tuned for the next headline news.